And now we are about to introduce our next presentation, and this is Cristobal Ignacio Burgos Sansuesa. And please, Cristobal, I hope I'll pronounce it right. He is a Chilean architect lead at UNStudio. His passion is utilizing technology to push the boundaries of architecture. And the following quote introduces his presentation quite well. We focus on how to make your life easier so you can go home earlier and spend time doing what actually matters, not setting up interoperability pipelines. With no further ado, let's introduce Cristobal on stage.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm Cristobal Ignacio Burgos Sanguesa. I'm joining you from Amsterdam. I'm leading the UNStudio tools. We are the unit that focus a bit more into in-house tools. So I will take you around how we design tools for non-technical designers. That will be pretty much my main presentation. So yes, I'm in the small box here. Perfect. Could we remove the name below, or I can just do this? Don't worry. Perfect. So yes, as I told you before, the presentation is how we tool. We do the tooling design for all of these tools that we do in-house, and we want to focus on the user-driven way to design ergonomic tools for Speckle in this case. So who are we? We are UNStudio Tools. We are the in-house tools units and workflow development unit. We pretty much try to do our architects' life easier. I'm an architect myself, so I can relate quite well with the pains of doing it once again, the same thing. So that's what we try to avoid. We try to make everyone's life easier so we can enjoy the beers after work faster, you know? So what do we actually do? We build accessible tools for every kind of designers because one of the first things that we realized is that the threshold sometimes is a bit high. You cannot need to know Grasshopper, you cannot need to know Python, and most of the designers that are working sometimes don't have the knowledge that available, or like the threshold to the learning curve is a bit too steep. So that's where we are focusing on at the moment, so everyone has access to that information. I'm gonna move myself back here. Lovely jubbly. And from whom we tool, pretty much as I explained before, we explain for computational oriented designers. We do non-computational designers too, meaning that people that can use Grasshopper, cannot use Grasshopper, that are more Revit intensive, that are less Revit intensive, people that can learn or to code and Python, things like that. We focus on all of them. And we are also focusing a lot in the architectural management workflows. And we have a lot of like new tools that we have been developing for that. But specifically, our focus is all about our workflow and how we make it as natural as breathing. Like for us architects, like drawing is quite natural, and computers are like not something that is part of our DNA, how we were trained. So what we are trying to do is basically make that every single tool that you have is like a pen or an extension of your hand, that you don't have to think about using it. You just use it, and the tool is there for you. You are not for the tool. So we are really product oriented, because by the end of the day, that's what we have to deliver, but we are user driven. We always focus on what the user needs, on how we can accommodate them, at the same time that we think, how can we make the user be a better user of themselves? So that's why we always like have this meme going around. So we also focus quite a lot in prototyping the abstractions, meaning that sometimes we take a bit more time in the thinking part. So when we have the product, we can use it and recycle it as much as we can. We have some modules that we use across all of our tools, and that's just because we thought about like, okay, if I do the abstraction properly, I can do it. I can use it in other places a lot easier. So how we do that? Well, as I said already, I'm Chilean, so for me, elemental experience is quite important. The equation of like finding the proper problem. We focus on like finding problems and like scoping them correctly, because we only give proper solutions. We can only give proper solutions to the proper problems. It's not worth to go and try to do whatever you want to do. You think it's correct if your problem is not well scoped. So that's a lot of the work that we do actually, because sometimes you don't even need like a tool. So our first problem was that we were getting scripts that were super, super disorganized. Some people call it spaghetti. We just think sometimes this is like if you were like drawing and your cat walked over your drawing table. So like the scripts start becoming like too messy really, really quick, because in terms of like we work with really complex and big projects. So they also got really complex and big. So our first solution was to have a set of modular tools that enable everyone to move the data from everywhere to everywhere. We pretty much focus on this first stage on like Grasshopper to Revit and the other way around. So we build like these components that allows you to just select everything, all the layers and sub-layers or streams from Speckle without the need of actually copying the URLs, because the users couldn't figure out that much. And that kind of worked. Basically, we like worked on how make like the moving easier. So the thing is like, did it work? Unfortunately, the answer will be no. So thank you very much for coming to this presentation today. No, but in all seriousness, it didn't work, but we learned and pivoted from that experience. It was a really short experiment. I would say that no more than 2 weeks here and there. So the learning experience was pretty much that we needed to do less clicks, the more better. Basically, what we try to do is doing specialized features with less clicks, meaning that we only do one thing really well, so the users knows what to expect from that component. Because basically we tried to do a lot with some components, the user couldn't figure out how to do it. So by the end of the day, if the user cannot do it, it's not used to have like a really complex component. So that's why like our usage target is always this, like try to do things that use a lot less clicks, but are really specialized, so they can really know what to expect from the components. The other thing that we learn is that, again, we do less, but a bit more niche. We should hyper-specialize in some things, not try to solve every single problem with one component, because by the end of the day, every project has its own kind of problems and differentiations, and everything is an edge case in our case. So we learned that, okay, maybe let's focus on these things, and that can be replicated across the table a lot easier. And how we pivot all of this, we really quite simple. We focus on the last mile. Instead of having all of these drop downs that you needed to update manually, and you have components that were updating it from the other side of the script, we just basically created these components that have all the branches and all the streams living by themselves, and you update everything locally from one component, and that updates globally the whole script. And that's what we did. Pretty much is like it's the same thing as before, but now it's a one-click suite of tools that enable everyone to move data from anywhere to everywhere. And this is like the second iterations of the package that we were building. And we focus a lot on the community. In UNStudio, we're focusing quite heavily into documenting all of our tools and how to use them, from all the scripts, all the step-by-steps. And we also have really good templates for all the scripts that we know that, since we know that every single project is different, we just give you a really good template. So you have the foundations, a really good foundation, how to use them, and then you can decide how to use them, how to apply them. So with this, if you are like a fairly non-specified architect, like technical oriented architect, you can still use it. But if you're really technical, you can really, really scope it into what exact need. So that's something that we focus quite a lot. And yes, those are like the two things. So now I want to give you like a really quick example of like how we did it. Pretty much this is just like a demo project that we did in Revit. These are all the levels. Those levels, then we move them, we export them through Revit, and we have them in Rhino. In Rhino, we have our model that we want to use. Since we have a bit of time constraint, I already built pretty much of all the communications of how we do it. But basically, we just update the stream codes, and then we get all the types, all the information from the Revit, we get it directly into the Rhino. So for example, now I can just tell it, okay, just get me all the slabs. All of this comes by out of the box. So basically then I tell it, okay, I want you to get the floor. Then it's mapped itself to the exact level of Revit. So then I can just select what branch of all the branches of the project that I want to send. It goes directly in there, so I can just send it, and I'm just going to send this whole project that it was already like made. I'm just going to show you one quick example of how we did it. And when we send all of this information, this one, I'm going to delete this one because I want to show you how we do it. So basically, I already got all my streams, and you can see I'm going to start from bottom top. So I'm going to import my basement walls. Those are here. Then I'm going to import my basement slabs. Also, I send them directly from there. Now I'm going to add my core walls. All of this comes out of the box. Everything all of this was just a model in Rhino by itself. It's a native element in here, and in here we get it as the proper thing of the proper type that we wanted to get. So you can see here, for example, that I have my core walls are on this component, and you can see that it's exactly the foundation 30 millimeter concrete that I wanted to get. All of these are exactly the types that exist in Revit already. So basically what we did is we just brought everything from Revit. Oh, I just realized that I was using Create, so we're just gonna make that really quick. Revit core walls, basement walls. And now I'm gonna bring the slabs that we also brought. You can see all of that working as one would expect from Revit. And the really nice thing is that we can also bring like more complex types. So basically we just mapped all of that, all the facades from our Rhino model. We map them directly again with you can see here, the facade glazed. We can map it exactly with the type of wall front that we wanted to get. We do a lot of like data validation, geometry validation. So you can see here, for example, that all of our nodes goes through a data validation component. So basically with that, we make sure that all of them run more efficiently, and then they can be created natively in Speckle. So you see, I just brought my whole project in a couple of clicks, but as you can see here is missing the columns. So the quick example of how we do things, we have these templates. So I'm just gonna say, okay, send the columns from Rhino. The program is going to ask me, is this what I was looking for? I'm just gonna put it here to keep it clean. Yes, this was what I was looking for, and it's going to throw me a lot of errors. The first thing that I'm going to start doing, demo, I'm just gonna select the layers of where the columns are. You can do it whatever way you wanna do it. Okay, we can see that this imported already, the levels, and this is asking me, oh, what category this is. So what I'm going to do, I'm gonna update my component that will bring all the categories to this other component. Okay, the categories, this is a column, and then I want to select what type I want to use. I'm gonna use 610 by 610. Okay, perfect. But now it's still asking me like, okay, where should I send it to? So for that, we also have that same component that reads the information and then loads it into each one of these components. So instead of having to go through different like dropdowns, you get everything inside your component. So basically now I'm sending everything from Rhino because we have our own custom workflow of how we want to send things through Speckle. And then I just select the columns, and that's it. That's how I send them. That's how I import them. The templates do pretty much all the pre-processing. So when I want to bring the columns, I just click receive, and they start showing up as native elements of everything that I needed. So that's pretty much how we want to like work in like this really simple and quick workflow. We have some really good examples, but the cool thing about all of this is since we have teams that are a lot more oriented into Revit and others are working Grasshopper, and sometimes like they don't know how to communicate properly. What we are doing is that you can also bring the things back from Revit to Rhino with another suite of tools. So let's say that, for example, I want to modify this specific slab. I just want to make it here because of the design we change it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just gonna don't attach it for the time being. I'm just gonna go send. I'm just gonna make a selection. All of this is just like normal Speckle usage. I'm gonna go to Revit slabs because that's where I want to send it. Okay, I'm gonna send it. It was sent properly. And now I'm gonna go to my templates, Speckle templates. So I'm gonna go to slabs and I'm gonna receive the slab from Revit. Is this what I needed? I'm gonna check if this is what I needed. Yes, this is what I needed. And it's still asking me like, okay, what's the layer? That's quite easy. I'm just going to update my streams. And then I'm gonna tell it from where you should receive these slabs, this specialties architect. This is coming from Revit, and it's from slab. So I'm gonna receive that. Oh, and we can see that this immediately got created as a Revit native geometry. And with that, I can just bake it. And when I bake it, that puts it exactly on the layer that I need it to be, so I can have a control of where I'm moving things in and out. And the best thing is that it's also bringing all the data from Revit to Rhino as the user object. So with that, I can have a track of like what elements I'm bringing to, because we also have like a couple of tools that are really focused on how we bring those modifications back, because maybe we want to make this adjustment in Rhino and then send it back to Revit. So that's pretty much one of our, I would say, most successful suites of packages. So with this, I think we have achieved some really cool things. Some user numbers. All of this is some really, really early testing. Basically, we calculate that we're saving 80% of the time in comparison with normal remodeling, because we just gave the same project to a Revit architect to bring it to Rhino and like a normal one, and that was the comparison for us was quite big. So that's why for us we are really, really, really excited about making this project grow and grow. For me, the most important one is we have a small user survey about the willingness to migrate from different solutions. It could be like Rhino Inside, it could be from Beam, it could be like from importing directly as a generic component. Like with Speckle, like 30% of the people that were using it was like, yeah, you know what, this is good enough for me. I think I prefer this over other solutions. I would say Rhino Inside is still the biggest competitor internally. But after our first iteration of components, 50% of the people thought, okay, this is actually easier and it's more flexible, so I prefer to use this one. And with this current iteration, 75% of the people have told us, like, yes, we would move to this framework, because it does require different mental thinking. I think that the fact that it's asynchronous movements from one application to another, it's quite useful because you don't have to have everything open. So you can collaborate in an easier way. And we are using this in some projects. We are using it so far in 5 projects currently. And Speckle have been run through like around 500,000 square meters of design. So for us, those are quite big numbers. We're quite happy with that. So yes, other than that, that was my presentation. I think I just like went a bit faster just to show you a bit better how we were working. So we just have some times for questions now. So yes, just shoot them ahead and I'll try to answer them as better as I can. Sorry, let me just maximize this. If you edit something in Rhino, will automatically update the Revit model? Yes, we have components that do that, so you can have them both open at the same time, because they use the feature of auto send from Rhino, and they also get the same treatment for Revit. So we have some things that we're working on that. Obviously, the geometry processing, it's quite complex. For example, we know that Revit really doesn't like splines. So when you have things that are non-planar or like non-rationalized, sometimes you get issues because Revit doesn't know how to rebuild it. So we have a couple of solutions of how we solve that problem. If it's, for example, maybe we facet them sometimes, other times we try to rationalize them, and other times we just tell the user like, hey, this will not go to Revit. That's for us quite important, letting know the user what's the error. So we spend a lot of time just showing what the error is and giving them solutions of how to solve them, so they're just like hanging in there. Is it necessary to configure the Revit files with datum elements, levels, and grid for the connector to comprehend the location of items in addition to walls, columns, and floor types? Not necessarily. You can do it without that. We just, for when we know that we need to move things quickly to Speckle, to Revit, we start with the template files that we have and like the levels, just because it's easier to control it. But for example, the types, yes, the types you need to have them from Revit, because you need to map them somehow. But if, for example, if you want to do all the levels in Revit, we just from Rhino, you just send them through Rhino, and we also have components that basically you read the model, the levels from Revit in Rhino, but then you adjust them in Rhino themselves and then send it back as an update to Revit. So basically, it's yes. The answer will be yes. We start with that just because it's easier to set out everything. But then, if we need to make adjustments, we just do what it's better for the project. That's what we really focus. It's just like it's not a one solution that you have to do things. We are trying to be as non-opinionated as possible, but you sometimes need to make the user do it in a certain way. But if you in the ahead of the road, you can just like decide how you want to update things. How do you manage the mirrored libraries in Rhino and Revit in this workflow? And given that this is a problem, this probably is a common challenge, is there something Speckle that provides for checking the two sides of the pull-push have what is required to function correctly? Okay, the mirrored libraries, I'm guessing that's for more the types, since most of them, we have them living in the cloud. We don't have them mirrored, we have them on the cloud, and then everything works from there. If we adjust anything, it also adjusts on the cloud. So we are all the time calling that data. And yes, there's the probably common challenge is that something Speckle provides for checking the two sides of pull and push. Yes, and for like those Speckle things, we have our own Speckle instance. We call it UNStudio, that does a lot of like health check. So, for example, we have when you send something to a specific stream, it checks like, okay, was this exactly the same thing that it was checking before, or like checks if like there are streams that are too old. It tells you that, so you can just like start cleaning it. So our server instance has a lot of those small health packages solutions to avoid having like old data or out of or low quality data in general. Would you consider considering the share the tool set for either love or profit? Yes, that's a good question. We are quite interested in like this whole open source conversation. That's for sure something that we want to go to. It's just a matter about time, about how we feel that it's something that we can release to the public. But I for sure will get back to you because that's something that we really think it's important for the community. Because for us, we have learned so much from the open source of the project from Speckle. We use a lot of we try to use as much of open source as possible because we believe that's the way to go. And we would like to contribute to the open source space. So for sure, I will get you back. I cannot give you a straight answer right now, but for sure, we'll get you back into if we or when we are going to open source these tools. How can we help you to get Speckle adoption survey from 75% to 100% and UNStudio? Just keep doing the great job that you're doing. I think we're always in constant communication with the Speckle team. From all the providers of services, let's say, that we use, the Speckle team is by far my favorite. It's not because I'm presenting for you, but it's for real my favorite because I really like that you understand the importance and the needs of like architectural designers and people in general in the EC world, because sometimes we get a bit left out. So I think to get it from 75% to 100%, it's more of like an internal decision, but because for me right now, I don't see what else you could do other than keep sustaining the project, and I think it's going to organically grow to 100%. Which tool do you use to document the workflow and scripts when you show look at website? Yes, we have our own platform of documentation that we coded in-house. Everything that we do, it's pretty much done completely in-house. We have from our platform tools. It's an in-house tool that is like a Next.js web frame with React that we built in-house. Right now we are a really small team, but since we are a small team, we can just do things really quick. But yeah, the documentation platform, the tool platform, our AI platform, all of that is coded in-house by ourselves. We usually receive Revit models from architects. Are we able to import the geometry of these models into Rhino with Speckle for a structural team to analyze in GSAs? Yes, and I'm not sure. It's a bit of a complex question. We don't use usually GSA, but since we are using the native the native Speckle conversion system, and a diagnostic one, it should be possible. We haven't done it, but it should be possible using the same structure and framework of tools. How does the tool handle blocks in Rhino creating families in Revit when creating curtain walls? That's a really good question because it's always the trickiest. We have some Rhino tools that basically are looking. We made it like our own plugin for Rhino that basically converts blocks into like families, and those families then are the ones that you upload to the Speckle space. So basically, we just then map, okay, in this position with this orientation goes this family, and then that's how we do it. Of course, that's really in development, and that's like our jewel, like the crown jewel, because it's effectively, it has been one of the hardest problems that we have to tackle so far. But yeah, we have like our own solution for doing like these kind of blocks. That basically that's what we send instead of just sending like surfaces.
All right, Cristobal, congrats.
Perfect.
You made it to all the questions.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Most importantly, just wanted to also let you know that there is a lot of love from the audience in terms of your setup, and thank you for the
Great
great
to hear.
brought.
Perfect. Great to hear. And also, I'm just going to plug that we're also looking for talent here in Amsterdam. So if you want to come and join us, send me an email. I think it was on the description, or just apply at UNStudio.com /jobs, I think it is. So we would happy to hear from you all. And thank you for all the Speckle team for all of this.